Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch with the real _G Warner from Twitter. Thank you for all the support so far. I really appreciate it. We've done a bunch of preseason and season recaps from last year, the season 2022, but we're getting ready for 2022-23. And this will be the last of the big, league-specific podcasts or video streams, whether you're watching on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, on StreamYard, on Twitter, on Spotify, wherever you are. Thank you. I appreciate it. Feel free to slide in DMs, send ats, do whatever you want. The real _G Warner. I have the same handle on Instagram, but I don't know if that's even doing anything, so I'm not sure I care. But thank you all. With that all said, I'm going to now go into the Spanish La Liga, and go through each of the teams, starting at the bottom, based on squad values as we enter into this new season. And I'm going to go through the strengths and weaknesses of each of these teams, based on the last year's performance, and then talk about what they've done in the transfer window. It's really hard to price and talk about Barcelona right now because I really don't believe that they can afford any of the transfers they've made. But I'm going to trust Transfer Market and what they said has been registered. I'm not sure really what has been. There's rumors like about Jules Koundé and about a ton of stuff like that. There's a lot in limbo, and that's why I waited so long for this league. But we're getting closer and closer to the season, and Barcelona's playing here in Dallas next week, and I'm thinking about going out there to go watch them. Because I've yet to see them live. I did see a bunch of Spanish matches last year in person, but not that one, or not that team. Without further ado, I'll get into Hirona, and then also we're going to do futures at the end of the show. And I'm currently contemplating a big show of futures that once I get some ideas on what I actually want to play, throwing that stuff out there and letting everyone hear about it. We'll start with Hirona, who qualified from the second division last year, won promotion in the playoff, which was a crazy back and forth affair, really both rounds of the playoff. I'm not sure that most people had Hirona getting through, but good for them. And I think they kind of deserved it based on their play, to be honest. They had some goals that were pretty impressive, especially winning 3-1 in the second leg against Tenerife on the road. It seems like the road teams have been really good in La Liga about advancing. But when I look at what they've done with their squad, they're currently only worth $23 million. That's not great. It's going to be really hard climbing up to the next league to stay. It sounds like they're trying to get some players from New York City FC who are good in the MLS, but there's a huge step for that, to say the least. So I'm not really sure what to expect from this team. And they look pretty clearly like one of those teams that look like they're going down. We'll talk hopefully about relegation, top 4 finishes, which I did win my future on Sevilla last year, finishing top 4, though they sank like a rock towards the end and made me a little nervous. But Hirona, when I look at them, I don't have a lot to say about them other than they're pretty good as an attacking side in that final, or the 2-legged final against a very defensive Tenerife, but I can't imagine they're going to be able to play that way coming in. Next, we'll go to Rcd Mallorca, who have American owners, at least part of it. I believe the Phoenix Suns, Steve Nash, the Phoenix Suns owner, also Steve Nash separately, but I guess they're also forever linked. And they brought in Matthew Hoppe last year, a U.S. international from Schalke, who were out of money and going down a league, and he never played, but was somehow producing for the U.S. national team. So I'm not sure what to expect from him. Looks like at their arrivals and departures, Olivan left for Espanyol, who we'll get to soon. But unfortunately, that was not a huge surprise because there's a lot of back and forth, and kind of that seemed like be a position that was up for grabs. I'm not that worried about that. Juan Sastre, who was in the team a couple seasons ago when Mallorca were in La Liga, went down and then stayed up by the skin of their teeth last season, went into the last day. They lost some players down to Deportivo Alaves in the second division, Segunda División. And it looks like a pretty young, it's kind of hard to get an idea of where they're going. They had loaned in Morici from Lazio, and he was a huge goal scoring talent that really, for a team that could not score, was a huge boon for them. But he's gone. They did, I guess, keep Pablo Maffeo, who's a Spanish international who's on, I think, on loan from Stuttgart. And that's a pretty good signing because he's going to be, I mean, I think he was big in the under 21, will be important potentially in the World Cup this year, which is also a little bit of a drawback because that's a definite concern. In looking at their team, they haven't done a lot, and they had a lot of problems and barely stayed up last season. They had some crazy goals that I don't really think were deserved. Adlon Prats definitely rained on my parade a couple times, and I just don't really necessarily believe in who they are, to say the least. But they're here, they're in the league another year, and unfortunately, they're going to have to add some players. And if they don't, I'm very concerned about them because I don't think that they have enough talent. Really, they shouldn't be in this league, I don't think. The fact that they're here is great. They somehow survived a really poor defensive effort starter that they had to bench, essentially. And they also did loan in Sergio Rico from PSG, and he's gone now, along with their 36 or so year old goalkeeper Pape Reina, I think was his name. Anyway, doesn't matter, they're not on the team anymore. So there's some big questions about the money for that team, and I don't know if that, I feel like they're definitely ripe for going down, though the squad value certainly says that already. Next we'll go to Real Valladolid, who were a great team. I was very sad to see them go down 2 years ago, very happy to see them back. They did lose their manager, Sergio Gonzalez, to Cadiz, who stayed in the league somehow. I was thinking about doing this podcast in Spanish, but I just don't think anyone wants to hear me stuttering or trying to think of words the whole time. Pero tengo la habilidad. And I got to say, bringing in Sergio Asenjo from Villarreal, who's definitely a second choice keeper, but that was important to then test Jordi Masip, who's, I think, a better goalkeeper based on what I've seen. But that should be a good race. And those two definitely will be challenging each other, along with another 30 plus goalkeeper. I guess not as big a deal at that position. But essentially under Sergio Gonzalez, which is not the same way that Real Valladolid played this past season, because they played really well and scored a lot of goals. They were very defensive, and I imagine we'll see a similar type of strategy, though. I don't know a ton about Paqueta, their manager. He's been around for a while. Gonzalo Plata coming in. That's a decent signing, $3.3 million for a league that really has been struggling financially, I think. And that speaks to where La Liga are currently compared to the English Premier League, though they did win Champions League, to say that. Monchu from central midfield of Granada, don't know him very well. I think Sergio Escudero, who came from Sevilla to Granada, then went down with them. He's a better player than I think he gets credit for, but doesn't play a lot, which is a concern. They did lose Ruben Alcaraz to Cadiz middle of last season, right around when Sergio Gonzalez came. Part of me wonders if he'll end up coming back, but didn't lose a lot, to say the least. But in terms of what they added, I'm not sure. Sergio Leon, a good goal scorer who was a threat in the league before, is important. I do think goal scorings are going to be their trouble. But they were a really good defensive team that countered and won me a lot of bets, I got to say, when they were still in the top division. Bringing in Sergio Guardiola was a bit of a surprise from Rayo Vallecano, but I guess good for that. Let's see. Okay, he was on loan with Rayo, so that makes a little more sense. Sean Weissman, the Israeli international, who's always scoring goals, it seems. I mean, there's still a lot of this team that were really good in the second division last season, did not win it, but ended up coming up anyway in, I think, the second position. I hope that they're going to play the same way, and I like that they know. I mean, with a year away, maybe they got a little bit better offensively against weaker competition. I still think they have that defensive metal, and that's really important. Moving next to Rayo Vallecano, who, as I just mentioned, lost Sergio Guardiola, who is a pretty important goal scoring option for them. They're keeping Unai Lopez from Athletic Club, which is important for them in the midfield. Salvi Sanchez coming in from Cadiz is important because he was always on that team sheet for Cadiz, whether that meant that he was good or not, because that team is pretty poor. And then Diego Lopez, an old keeper, but a talented one for Espanyol. He's important to be there. While Lucas Zidane's child, is no longer on the team because he was horrible. So that's a pretty good idea. Andoni Iraola was getting a lot of rumors about potentially going to a bigger job. But I wonder if the second half swoon speaks to why he's still at Rayo and still has to prove himself. Though Rayo essentially started the year off really well, won a ton of matches at home, and they're this really small, kind of weird shaped stadium. I don't think that's changing because I don't think they really expect a lot. And I feel like they are a prime candidate for the sophomore slump to get relegated in year 2. With that said, looking at their team, I mean, Falcao, we'll see what he can give at 36 years old. I feel like he didn't play the second half of the year, and that was a big problem for them because he was a huge part of them essentially coming up, being the heavy favorite to be relegated, and then playing pretty well for a while, starting off the year really well in Europa League competition for that place, essentially, or those places. And then had a really tough second half of the year, maybe due to injury, but I feel like that's because they really weren't very good. And they happen to play a lot of the bad teams in La Liga at home, which is a huge benefit. EC Palazon had an awesome year. We'll see if he can keep that going, because I imagine he's going to be pretty important for them to potentially try to limit as much as possible. A lot of the players are still around, so that's important. But I wasn't really, to be frank, as I get the yawns, I love it. Sorry. To be frank, I'm not sure that I believe in them, and they're another team that I think are potentially a go down candidate. Moving next to Cadiz, who I mean, amazing that they stayed in the league 2 straight seasons. But a win at Barcelona, I think, was a big way to do that. They make some of the most hilarious mistakes with Jeremías Ledesma, Argentinian goalkeeper. Some of his mistakes are incredible. Their defense is great at getting yellows and red cards, and I mean, they frustrate you. That's what they do. I think Sergio Gonzalez, when he came in, was a big important part of bringing a little bit more offense to a defensive team that played the most defensive football in all of Europe, at least the top 5 leagues that I follow. They brought in Zaldua as a free transfer from Real Sociedad. That'll help at right back. They could never have enough defenders because they defend so much. Losing Jen Johnson doesn't seem like a huge loss. Salvi Sanchez, another not a huge loss, I got to say. Buying Victor Chust from Real Madrid, I think, is important. Alcaraz stays around, as I already mentioned, who initially come on loan from Real Valladolid. They brought in a left winger from Michelin, but we'll see about what that looks like in the adjustment to La Liga. Hirona left, who had played a ton for them at center back, the Armenian international, but he did not play a lot towards the second half of the season. And Cadiz hung on by a thread. Not sure if you can expect a lot from Alvaro Negredo at 36 years old. Goal scoring has never been easy for them. Lucas Perez was a huge part to their season, coming over, I believe, from Elche mid-season, because he was on 2 teams last year after moving the summer before. Choco Lozano needs to be an important part of their team this year. He's 29, so he's not young, but he scored a huge goal for them late in the season. And, you know, I do like Sergio Gonzalez. I think that he's a great manager, so I trust in him a little bit, but that's another team. I mean, there's a lot of relegation candidates here, which makes me think that there might be even some good value on some long shots there potentially, because there might be a huge chasm between the bottom, I don't know, 8 teams in the league. It almost feels like, because we're just getting to Elche now, who, I mean, of all teams that are surprising to stick around for 2 seasons, they've done it twice now. Lost Guido Carrillo, but he was aging and it's hard to depend on Antonio Barragan. He's gone as well, but they brought in Ezequiel Ponce. Not a lot of activity there. It's going to be, looks like a similar team to what they had before. Tete Morente was awesome for them last year. Part of me wonders if he's going to move on. Goal scoring is going to be a problem. They're going to need to get results at home. I do wonder if Gerard Gumbau is going to play a lot better in defensive midfield, because I feel like he's more of an attacking midfielder. Mojico is great, the Colombian at left back. Don't have to worry about the World Cup. Lo siento a Sergio, a friend of mine from business school. Tough break, because I know he and his dad were potentially going to Qatar. But oh well. The center backs are very slow, and Enzo Rocco, I mean, I feel like runs in mud the whole time, but that's going to be a big problem for him. Edgar Badia seems like he's taken that job now. At 30 years old, though, and at 5'10" or 5'11", that's still a fairly big problem for Elche. They're a relegation candidate for sure. We finally get to Unión Deportiva Almeria, or Almeria for short. I mean, they won the second division last year. I feel like they kind of came out of nowhere towards the end, but credit them for that. They've done a fair amount of business, bringing in Alejandro Pozo at right back. Seems to be pretty good. He was always talked about as someone that was pretty important. Bringing in Mendez from Lorient is a name that I remember. In terms of who they've lost, doesn't seem like a lot of their players are going to big teams, so that's fairly important. And ultimately, they also bought a center back, Kaiki, who's going to be very important to them at $7.7 million from Santos, which I imagine is Brazilian. So, I mean, it seems like they're investing. They're also, their manager's been around for a little while, a couple of years now, it looks like. They are the 7th, I guess, least valuable team, which does put a fair amount between them and the bottom. And that's important. So we'll see what ends up happening here. But I feel like I'm bullish on Almeria, especially after I just feel good about teams that won the Segunda División or the lower league and them sticking around because they know how to win. And that's the most important thing is you have to win games. You can't just draw every single one, or else you'll be in that relegation fight forever because you're not going to do that at Real Madrid, at Barcelona, and things like that. Don't know a ton about the Almeria team, and they do, of course, open with a home match against Real Madrid. Wonder if that's random or if that happens all the time, coincidentally, to La Liga and the La Liga Segunda División champions play each other week 1. Wonder if that's on purpose. Anyway, next we'll go to Osasuna, who were, I mean, an incredible team on the road last year to start the year and basically became safe because they played so well on the road. Struggled at home, but had some good comebacks against the big clubs. One I remember against Barcelona, where I was so mad that they were somehow trailing 2-1 despite dominating a game, but got a late goal. In terms of what they've done with their team, they brought in Ruben Peña from Villarreal. I'm not sure that's too important. They brought in the Levante keeper, Aitor Fernandez, who had, I think, lost his job. So we'll see what he does. I imagine he'll be a backup to Sergio Herrera, who has saved a ton of points with his ability to save penalties last year. In terms of losses, Oyer, who went, I think, abroad to a team maybe in Greece, but he was older and probably getting moved along anyway. Not a lot of losses there. Not a lot of people brought in, but they did keep Ante Budimir, who's an important goal scorer who had a huge run of goals. Jimmy Avila, always tough to predict, but I want him on my team for sure. So long as he's not getting a red card, of course, because he's kicking out everybody all day, all night, every day, every chance he has. I think this team could be in that relegation spat as well. I don't know that the second half of the season, I feel like, tells who they are, and they were not good in that part. Moving next to Celta de Vigo, always a great offense, always a ton of possession, no fear against who they're playing, which definitely puts them in trouble against the bigger clubs. But for teams that can't score, those are the ones that really fight relegation. And I know for sure that Celta de Vigo can score. They brought in Unai Nunez on loan from Athletic Club, which is, I mean, he seems like someone they'd want to keep, and I imagine he'll eventually go back. But Luca de la Torre is there. Oscar Rodriguez on loan from Sevilla, trying to bring in more attacking talent. The loss of Brais Mendes is pretty disappointing. Unfortunately, that is a big, important part of their offense. And so we'll see what happens. Losing Okayu Kushlu to West Bromwich Albion, definitely loss of a central defender. A lot of people know from his time in the Premier League with that same club. But ultimately, I think he was struggling anyway with getting in and that sort of stuff. Santivina is still important. We'll see how much Iago Aspas can give at age 34 and always injured, it seems, at times. But he made himself available quite a bit last year, and he's a awesome goal threat. I do think that the offense struggles big time without him. Franco Cervi, I think, did a good job of kind of filling in, and maybe is part of why they were able to let Brais Mendes go, knowing that might happen. He's 28, so not super young. But there's some talent on this team, and they score goals. The biggest issue, I think, is their defense. Hugo Malo is important, or Mayo. Javi Galan has been pretty good for them. He's still worth over 13 million, which seems very high to me, but whatever. Joseph Aidu has been pretty good. You got to worry about him in the World Cup for Ghana, but they brought in Unai Nunez to go alongside him from Athletic Club, who are no strangers defending. So, I think I'm bullish on Celta, especially because Celta de Vigo are a team that can score goals and they're underdogged a lot. Next, and just above them, or I guess 20 million above them, so not just, is Espanyol, who I did not really like towards the end of the season. They brought in a new manager, which they had to because their old manager was getting in fights with their top scorer. Bring in Joselu from Deportivo Alaves, a step down when he was expecting to go to Sevilla last season, but they held on to him as much as they could. That matters, I think. Bringing in Benjamin Lecompte, who was a good goalkeeper for Monaco, who got moved along because Niko Kovac was in love with the German goalkeepers and brought a Nubel, which I don't really know that should have been deserved. But that's where we are. I do think that bringing in a goalkeeper is important because they watched Diego Lopez go, as I've already mentioned. Olivan coming in from Mallorca is also important. I feel like picking off as much as they could from teams going down or teams are fighting potentially to avoid relegation. I wouldn't be surprised if David Lopez comes back. He's not with a club and has been with the team forever. Melendo is a little bit of a surprise seeing him leave, but it was very important to have Jose Lu, and I wonder how he'll team with Raul de Tomas. RDT was their goal scoring wonder boy. Without him, they couldn't score goals. Lewu didn't really do much for him. And I think with Jose Lu, I can't imagine that's going to be a substitution type of thing. I think they'll probably play 4-4-2 with them together. And I'm curious to see how they play together because they're two good goal scorers. And that might be a big reason why they're up in value. The Jose Lu is only worth $5.5 million, whereas Raul de Tomas is at 27.5. So that tells me, based on that big difference in squad value, depending on if they're going to try to sell RDT, he'll probably be playing a lot more. But I think those two together probably will be good, though Jose Lu is certainly used to being alone on an island. Next, we'll go to Getafe, who, I mean, started the year off so poorly and then got really good under a manager who stuck around, and Quique Sanchez Flores. Quique deserves it. He brought in a defensive medal. They tried to go offensive for a while. It clearly did not work, and I imagine they'll stay the same way. Bringing in Porto from Real Sociedad on loan was important. Kind of surprised Sociedad let him go, but I guess bringing in Bryce Mendez, it makes a little more sense. Dominguez Duarte coming in at center back will help because they never have enough, and they're always fouling and doing a ton of the Bordeaux style, and I think Quique really just kind of kept that going or restored that order when he came in mid-season. Seoane coming in to play central midfield from Huesca from the second division, though they were in the league 2 seasons ago, might mean something. In terms of who they lost, Hugo Duro was already gone to Valencia, had a great year, and they sold him for only 4.4 million. That's a great buy by Valencia, who need a lot more of those. Matias Oliveira moving to Napoli was a pretty big move, maybe surprise, maybe not. But that left back position needs to be filled, and they brought in Fabrizio Angeleri from River Plate. So we'll see what he can give. I imagine he's probably pretty young coming over from Argentina, 28, so not that young. But we'll see what happens. That left back position might be a concern for Getafe, but the nice part is they're going to be defensive under Quique. So that might be something they can kind of ride through that storm. Next is Athletic Club, which, I mean, there's $100 million difference between Getafe and Athletic Club, which, I mean, so the top 8 clubs, I guess it would be 3, 6, or top 9 clubs. My math is tough to do. We're doing after dark anyway. It's a huge gap between the two halves of La Liga. But Athletic Club, I mean, I'm a little surprised with what they let go so far. They have the Spanish national team goalkeeper. That's always going to be an important part to them, though certainly some risk of him playing in the World Cup. All these loans, they let Unai Lopez go to Rayo or to stay at Rayo. Unai Nunez going to Celta De Vigo. Inigo Cordoba is not with the club anymore. He didn't do anything with them last season, but seemed to have a lot of talent and a lot of high expectations for him. In terms of all these other clubs that came in, I mean, it looks like a lot of players they promoted from the second team. And I'm a little worried about them because they're a great defensive counterattacking side, but as a favorite, they were horrible. I like them against the big clubs, and maybe that's where they will be again. Raul Garcia at 36 years old is not getting any younger. Javier Villalibre at 24, the Buffalo. He's never really played big minutes. Iñaki Williams struggles to score with his chances. I am curious to see Oyan Sanset and what he offers to the team. Nico Williams, similar to his brother, can't really finish either. That's a concern. But Berenguer was pretty good. Iker Muniain at 29 is still around. That's important. They've got a ton of big players, big names, and a ton of talent. I'm curious about what they're going to do at central. I guess they're pretty thin at center back now, but Dani Vivian at 23 years old, I guess, is basically taking Unai Nunez's spot. I'm going to trust them to play defense. I'm still not going to trust them to score offense, similar to last year, I guess. But love backing them as a dog and fading them as a favorite, to be frank. Valencia, then, as they try to climb back to the top where they used to be, Denis Cheryshev, the Russian, is gone, but he wasn't playing a ton. They brought in Hugo Duro, who's already there, but Samu Castillejo from AC Milan is going to be important. Definitely adds a wing. Not that they haven't had enough of those. I feel like Valencia were just a team that could not defend for years now. Bordalas came in and instilled a defensive strategy, but now Gattuso has come in, the former Napoli manager. I don't know what that means for this team. I think they're going to play offensively and probably fall into bad habits with not being able to defend. So I'll go there. They have a really deep goalkeeping room, but I don't know how you decide who plays there. I guess they have 2 over 30s, but Mamardashvili from Georgia is 21, was okay, but wasn't playing every match. So I'm curious what will happen to the new manager there. In terms of what they have in defense, I mean, it's hard to say because they have a lot of center backs that, I mean, they were playing, new manager, so we're gonna have to see what Gattuso does. I can't imagine he's going to be conservative because that's not what he ever did at Napoli, but we'll see. Certainly health is important to them, but I feel like their central defense is pretty weak, and I potentially might be looking to go against them as much as I can this season. They have a lot of great attacking talent, but that doesn't do everything in this sport, unfortunately. So building from the back is a concern. Next to Real Betis, who had a pretty good year, went to one of their matches last year. They threw a cigarette at me because they, in a Europa League match, because they thought I was German and the German team had just scored. It was funny. I'm not sure that will ever happen to me again. Hopefully that's the worst thing that does. And it was actually pretty cool. They brought in Luis Felipe, center back from Lazio, who played a fair amount for them. Certainly doesn't hurt to add more defense to a team that Manuel Pellegrini has managed really well, and added some stability to a team that needed it because they were an auto fade, even the season that he got there, the COVID year. Christian Teo is gone, not a big deal. Joel Robles, not a big deal to be seeing him gone either. So they've kept a lot of important players. That's great. Julian Jose, he's coming in, or I guess staying from Real Sociedad. I think came in before. Didn't really add a lot, nothing really flashy, but honestly, they had some pretty good attacking talent and scoring goals is something that they can always do. Nabil Fekir is when he's on the pitch, not getting red cards, he is a great attacker. William Carvalho was really good also. And I think from when I see this team, they have a really strong defensive midfield. I really like Pellegrini as a manager, and I feel like their center back room is only getting deeper with Luis Felipe coming in. Eder Gonzalez needs help. Mark Bartra was a better player last season, but still has mistakes in him, and he's 31. So I don't know if those will disappear. They've got a lot of bodies to play center defensive, or a center back, excuse me. We'll see what happens. And I really like seeing Alex Moreno, though it looks like there's some rumors that he might be moving. But until he's gone, he's an important left back for them. Next, we'll go to Sevilla, the other Andalusian. I mean, there's a lot of Andalusian clubs, I guess, but another big rival. Wish I'd gone to that match for those two, but I did check out both the arenas, which was cool. Didn't bring much in. Lost Diego Carlos to Aston Villa. Oscar Rodriguez on loan to Celta de Vigo. Julian Lopetegui, I'm surprised to see him still as a manager. I thought he was going to be gone end of season. They loaned Augustinson to Aston Villa. I guess they just like an express from Sevilla to the Midlands of England. Alejandro Pozo is gone to, I believe, Almeria, as I already mentioned. Luke de Jong, I guess he was already going to go. But so what do they have? Because Sevilla had an awful run to end the season. Literally almost tanked out of Champions League, which would have been incredible. But it was close to happening, I must say. I don't really know what to say about their goal scoring because Youssef En-Nesyri scored every time he touched the ball, or every time he touched the Bayonne 2 seasons ago. Last year dealt with injuries and was really not good for them. Maybe the AFCON in the middle of the season was a big problem, and that only speaks to other World Cup issues and what that might happen. Rafa Mir was a bench player. I don't think that he's someone you can rely upon. Ronnie Lopez coming, I think, back from Olympiacos now at 26. Maybe he's going to come in and do stuff, but I feel like they didn't get a lot out of Papu Gomez, who had a fair amount of fanfare coming from Atalanta. Lucas Ocampos, I think, got just beat up, and he's certainly someone that they attack. Maybe he'll do something or a little bit more. Bringing in Idrissi from Cadiz certainly makes the Cadiz offense worse, but it was already pretty bad. Tecatito came in. Maybe we'll have his legs under him a little bit more. Surprised to see Rakitic still playing at 34, but I guess that's still got some legs and still important to that team. They need to keep Fernando healthy because he's a great center defensive midfielder, but also can play center back when they need it. Jesus Navas at 36. Hard to rely on him for too much. Sevilla's loaded. I guess they didn't really need to bring in too much. All they really have done so far is bring in a center back from Galatasaray named Marcao, Brazilian. But it looks like Jules Koundé is still in the books. He's going to be gone. And I think they're going to have to really figure out that center back situation because they're going to have, it looks like if Koundé does move on, a Galatasaray center back and also Karim Rekic, who filled in pretty admirably last season, but is definitely not someone you trust. Maybe that means that's where Fernando is going at 34, though. I wonder how reliable that is. And Koundé seems to be on the move. So I imagine Sevilla, once they sell Koundé, will probably be bringing in a center back. I just don't know who that is. We got Sociedad then our next. Somehow more valuable than Sevilla. It's a little bit surprising to me. In terms of what they brought in, Mohamed Ali Cho from Angers is a good signing. He was a young player with a lot of talent. I'd say the same sort of thing about Bryce Mendez. He might not be as 25, pretty young still. Takefusa Kubo, who's been all over La Liga on loan from Real Madrid. They brought him in. I mean, that's a lot of spending, and maybe that's part of where the squad value comes from, higher than Sevilla. Defense has never been something I've trusted Real Sociedad, but ultimately their offense is kind of what's let them down because they don't score a lot. Imanol Alguacil, my first manager I saw on the touchline in a game live when I went on a Spanish trip last year, celebrating the Copa del Rey from 2 seasons ago. And that was cool, but then looked like towards the end of his season that he might not be sticking around. I guess he's got this year his contract expires, so we'll see what happens there. But Zaldua gone to Cadiz, not a huge loss. Porto was important to them and might cause them some problems. Zanujai gone as well. I mean, there's a lot of movement that's happened, but they've gotten younger and brought in some really strong attacking talent. We'll see how long they can hold on to Alexander Isak from Sweden. He's awesome, finishing problems for sure, but has great speed. I'm curious to see what we'll get from Carlos Fernandez, who's a purchase from Sevilla and didn't really do much last season. And then got to see what happens with the health of Mikel Oyarzabal, who was their captain, but hurt his knee and was out for a long time. Looks like he's coming back mid-October. That feels pretty, I mean, he might not really play a real factor until after the World Cup. And that's a long part of this season. I think when you look at their defense, that's my biggest concern. And I mean, they signed Lenormand through a long-term deal, it looks like. That's important. Alex Ramiro, though, at goalkeeper has big problems in him. Matthew Ryan is terrible goalkeeper, Australian national, and like I guess is playing in the World Cup somehow. But there's some flaws in the back, and I think the good teams will really fight that. So seeing them 5th in squad value makes me think that they're going to be very overrated this year. Villarreal then come next, who did not balance Champions League with La Liga very well last year, but are a threat because they're not playing in Europe, I don't think. In terms of what they brought in, bringing in Jose Luis Morales is huge from Levante. He's an awesome player, and I'm really happy to see that he's in the league still. Sad that he's not with Levante, but that was a pretty tough start to the season. They couldn't really come back from, though they came close. Pepe Reina came in as a free transfer from Lazio, but he's going to be behind Rui, hard to pronounce the double L's. But those are 2 old aged keepers, both 30 and above. So we'll see what happens with health there. But the good thing is you probably only need one. In terms of losses, Fernandinho gone to Villarreal, though he really hadn't done a lot. Departure to Villarreal, but he was okay. Transfer market's tripping there. But anyway, he had gone on loan to Mallorca. I don't know what to expect from him. But I feel like the offensive talent was a big problem for Villarreal. When the goals came, they came in bunches and they were dropping 3, 4, 5 on teams, but they had real trouble scoring even against the bad ones. So we'll see what happens to that offense this year. They'll certainly be in a lot better shape rest-wise. Paco Alcocer, I mean, I don't know what he was doing last year. Danjuma was awesome, has a muscular problem right now. We'll see what happens. And they got to keep Gerard Moreno healthy because he played a ton with the Euro last season. So before the season. So a little bit more health from them, not as spread out, fighting on multiple fronts. I think that'll be good for this team. And Unai Emery has shown that he can play defense with the best of them, can frustrate Manchester United can beat Bayern Munich. I mean, this team, if they can score goals, they'll be really good. That's a big if, but I like them as an underdog against the bigger clubs that they run into. Atletico Madrid, I mean, a weird year last year. Amazing to see the wins that they would get. Seemed really rigged in my opinion, but La Liga at the top will do everything they can to defend their babies, it seems, or their cash cows, besides, I guess, letting Barcelona register people. But Diego Simeone, awesome manager, so beloved at Atleti, but there was some talk about him last year after they were really struggling. In terms of their additions, Samuel Lino, I'd never heard of. Axel Witsel coming in to play center defensive midfield. Now that he's hopefully fully healthy off of an Achilles rupture, which really kind of stole his last season from him. That's a big signing because they needed help in midfield, I guess. And then Borja Garces from Tenerife came in on loan. I'm not really sure what to expect from him. In terms of losses, Molejo to Real Zaragoza, but he was at another team in the playoffs to try to get into this division. Not a big loss. Vasarco going to Olympiacos. I mean, they had a lot of right backs, even with losing Trippier too. Hector Herrera, he left for the Dynamo in Houston. There's a central midfielder that was gone, but certainly Axel Witsel is an improvement on that. And Luis Suarez, who wasn't playing a ton. So we'll see what happens with this team. I mean, Mateus Cunha is a great goal scorer. He's going to be gone at World Cup time with Brazil. Griezmann with France as well. I'm not really sure that you can expect a lot from them. I think my take on Atleti is they weren't as good defensively last year, and it showed because they needed to score more goals than their opponent, and they still are not built to be a good offense. João Felix is somehow still around. I can't imagine he will be. I guess if he's still here now, then probably he'll stick around for this season, but I feel like he's likely going to be going out sometime soon. Figured it would be this summer. I think I'm treating, I guess, Atleti in the same type of position that they were. Saul Niguez comes back from Chelsea after he was so bad for them. So probably will stick around. So maybe that central midfield is a little bit thicker than I thought it was going to be with Witsel added. But I think they're going to really need to shore up that defense. That center back position was never good for them last year, and we're going to have to make sure that it is this year because they need to play defense well. Bring in Ivo Gerbic from Lille on loan, or I guess he was already on Lille at Lille on loan. He was really bad for Lille, so I'm not really sure what to expect there. But Jan Oblak's they're gonna trust with him. If he can stay healthy, it's really important. If he can't, then that's a big problem for an Atleti team that I think are going to have to prove it defensively. And I think they're going to be pretty far behind the goal scoring abilities of Barcelona and just the team abilities of Real Madrid. Speaking of Barca, we'll go there. Rafinha coming in for 64 million. Kessié on a free transfer. He's probably most likely to get registered. I just don't know that Lewandowski is going to 50 million there. Rafinha 64. I mean, it's ridiculous what type of financial, like how much can they sell in their merchandise business? I know a lot of people care about Barcelona throughout the world, biggest club, blah, 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 but they haven't had any money. And it's just amazing they're making all these deals because they sold Coutinho for 22 million. And they spent over 110. So like, I just doesn't make any sense. Koundé, I mean, for financial fair play sake, I hope he goes to Chelsea because it doesn't make any sense how they could get him. Loaning out Longley to Tottenham, something they probably needed to do because he was pretty bad. Trincao doesn't return. He's going to Sporting in Portugal and Lisboa. I don't know. Other guys on this list aren't that important. Coutinho was never really going to factor in those plans. We'll see what happens with Lewandowski. I mean, he's probably going to score goals. They're going to score a ton, but they're going to let in a ton. I feel like they've made a top-heavy team even more top-heavy, and that's not good. Christensen had some big problems in him. We'll see how successful he'll be. He's a stud for Denmark, but he was not. He had some really bad moments for Chelsea, so we'll see. Looks like to me, Ronald Araujo and Christensen as their center backs, and that's a scary thing because if one of them goes down and Eric Garcia has to play, he just was really proven that he's not a good player yet. Somehow plays so much for the Spanish national team, and I really look forward to betting against him as much as possible. Maybe they move him to T, but it's really just a salary save. I don't know. There's huge problems the defense for Barcelona, and for that reason, I think Real Madrid are big favorites to win this league. In terms of what they brought in, they still profit, so they can still do stuff like pay $88 million for Aurelien Tchouameni. Huge, great signing from Monaco, and he's going to probably team up with Camavinga, as Real Madrid are essentially raiding France. They couldn't get Mbappe, but they've done really well. Jovic gone to Fiorentina on a free transfer, not a big deal. He wasn't really in the plans. Isco was old. Kubo has been on loan forever. Gareth Bale finally off the books, and Marcelo won a ton, but wasn't that important. And bring in Rudiger as well. I mean, just Carlo Ancelotti, you can't doubt him. What he did with an Everton side who were so bad and should have been relegated last year, I thought. Incredible. We'll see what Benzema can offer at 34 with a World Cup in his sights. But this team's going to be great. They're not going to do it in a pretty way, but they're going to prevent you from scoring, and they're going to score themselves. So I really like the idea of Real Madrid defending another league title. We'll be fighting certainly in Champions League a long time, but you can't kill a snake there. So I like them quite a bit. Now, as I move to the futures, and again, I'm the real_G Warner. Hit that follow button on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you're seeing this. Appreciate that. Real Madrid currently favorites at plus 105 as of right now on July 20th on Bet Online. Barcelona at 150. I feel like it should be a wider gap than that. I mean, it probably wouldn't be with those two clubs, but then plus 450 on Atleti, plus 1600 or 16 to 1 on Sevilla, and then we get into 50 to 1 on Real Sociedad. I don't think Atleti are really that close to these two teams, and I don't think Barcelona are that close to Real Madrid as well. I don't think that plus 105 is valued, let's say, because I don't think Real Madrid are winning this 49% of the time, as this would suggest. But I do believe that Real Madrid will eventually prevail. Moving next to a top four finish, Real Madrid minus 1,000, Barcelona minus 800, Atleti minus 300, Sevilla plus 125. I bet it last year. I don't feel anywhere near as good as I did about them last season as I do now. Lost their two center backs, which were really important, and they weren't scoring a ton of goals. So I wonder if there's some value potentially on Villarreal at plus 275. I'm not going to consider myself an expert because I won this bet last year, and it was probably the easiest bet I made all season. But I think Villarreal with a good team, with a healthier Gerard Moreno, might be worth a look. Real Sociedad, I just don't trust enough in the back. And I think they're new brought in players. I mean, we'll see how quickly they will gel, but I would imagine it'll take longer than expected. Real Betis are back in Europe. That's going to be tough. After winning Copa del Rey. Athletic Club, I just don't believe they can score enough. They have the talent, but have never really delivered on it. And Valencia, I still don't believe in their defense. So to me, Villarreal at plus 275, there's some value there, especially with Barcelona. Who knows what's going to happen to them? I mean, they're going to score a ton of goals, but I think that's the biggest problem for Villarreal is figuring out how many goals they're going to score and how they're going to score them. But Danjuma was awesome for them last year. Moreno should be healthier. So, and I love Unai Emery with his defense. He's been there before. He's proven he can do it. Next, we'll then go to Copa del Rey. Real Madrid are favorites at plus 330. Sad to see them go out, but they didn't really take the competition as seriously last season. So that's an issue, but that would be my lean because I think they're the best side in this competition or in this country by far. Not really going on a limb with that one, I guess. And then in terms of relegation, we have nothing for Spain. So I guess I can't. Damn, I was hoping to speculate, but I'll just say from here. So Osasuna at 109 million are probably in the safe category, but I don't even think they are necessarily. Osasuna, Almeria, Elche, Cádiz, Rayo, Real Valladolid, Mallorca, and Hirona are all possibilities to get relegated. Might be worth a flyer to take one of those 8 teams, whoever has the longest odds to get relegated, and see them fight as much as possible, because it's really a big deal. Once you start losing your head and start going crazy, it becomes really hard to stick around. So in terms of that'll wrap up today's La Liga podcast. I'm now finished the top 5 leagues. You can find them on my Twitter, on YouTube, on wherever you are looking podcast wise. You can find on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I think I'm going to go through and try to do a futures podcast, and then we'll start with probably a preliminary week 1 lines podcast, and then do another one as we get closer to it during the week of the season. Still planning for 2 podcasts a week. I'm expecting that will probably be another one with a bigger association where I mean, I do my own podcast for soccer, and I don't expect those to stop, but just an update expected to be picked up by another big podcast company. And I appreciate everyone's support and getting me there to this point. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will watch from here on out, because we're just getting more and more serious with more soccer matches under my belt. I'm looking forward to a really big season, and hopefully that starts with a Futures podcast, which we'll see next across all the top 5 big leagues. Hit me that follow button, give me the 5-star review on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts if you're enjoying this. Any comments in there, I'll make sure to look for my next episode to see if there are any questions that you want me to hit. But always at @the_real_G Warner on Twitter. DMs are fine, always open. Text me there, do what you want, and I'll reply to your questions wherever I see them. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.